When the sun came up and my wife's side of the bed was still cold, I feared the worst. Then my phone buzzed. One message, a few short words, and suddenly the woman I thought I knew was a complete stranger. That text I told you about, the one that blew up my world? It came at 7:12 the next morning. But to really feel it, you've got to start the night before. I'm Derek, 46 years old, living in Cedar Park. I fix broken fridges and AC units for a living. My life's not fancy, but it's steady. That night was supposed to be like any other. I made a simple dinner for two like I always do. She called on her way out of work, laughing, "Drinks with coworkers tonight. Don't wait up." So I didn't argue. I just set her plate in the fridge and ate mine at the kitchen table while Max, my dog, lay by the front door. Ears perked, listening for her. 9:30 became 11. 11 slid into 1. The TV was just background noise, a meaningless hum against the gnawing worry in my gut. I kept checking the driveway, listening for her tires on the gravel. By 3 in the morning it was just me, Max, the porch light, and that ugly blue glow from the stove clock. 3:01, 3:12, 3:27. That's when it hit me. I wasn't giving her space. I wasn't being the easygoing husband. I was just a man sitting in the dark, counting minutes instead of sleeping. At some point, staring at that empty doorway stopped being enough. I grabbed my phone and typed the simplest thing I could think of. "Everything okay?" No paragraph, no guilt trip, just 3 words from a husband who'd been up all night. I watched the screen like it was a lifeline. No typing bubble, no read, nothing. The house suddenly felt too loud and too quiet at the same time. The wall clock over the TV hit every second like a tiny hammer. Tick, tick, tick. Max gave one short bark at the door, then laid his head back down with this low, uneasy whine, like even he knew something was off. I walked to the front door and cracked it open. The Texas night air hit my face. Cool, empty, full of other people's taillights in the distance. Our porch light threw this sad little circle on the driveway, lighting up a spot where her car should have been. I checked my phone again. Still nothing. No call. No text. No excuse. And right there in that doorway with the clock punching holes in the silence behind me, I felt it. Something in my chest quietly broke. I don't remember falling asleep because I didn't. The alarm went off at 6 a.m. like it always does, but it felt almost insulting. Same sound, totally different life. I swung my legs out of bed and they were heavier than they'd ever been. Walked to the kitchen on autopilot. Max followed, nails ticking on the tile. I made black coffee the way I always do, except this time my hands were shaking just enough to make the mug rattle on the counter. That's when my phone buzzed. One message. From her. "I'm fine. Don't be dramatic. No, sorry. No, I should have called. No, I know I scared you." Just a line that took a whole night of worry and stomped on it. Dramatic. That word landed harder than any insult. I'd sat up all night thinking maybe she was in a ditch, in a hospital, God knows where, and now I was just the overreacting husband. Something in me straightened up right then. If I was dramatic for caring where my wife slept, then fine. But I wasn't going to be stupid on top of it. If she wouldn't tell me where she'd been, I knew something that would. I'm not a snooper by nature. I don't dig through purses. I don't read over shoulders. But that morning, staring at "Don't be dramatic," I realized I didn't owe blind trust to someone who couldn't send a 3-word apology. So I opened something I almost never touch, the Uber app. At first it felt dumb, desperate even. Then I saw it. Her profile. Her trip history. Little blue lines on a map. Numbers. Timestamps. The kind of cold details that don't care about feelings. One ride last night. Pickup, 11:42 p.m. Downtown office. Okay. Drop off. A residential street I didn't recognize right away. Copper Ridge Lane. I zoomed in and there it was. The name tied to that address from a past ride note. Ryan Holtz. I'd shaken his hand at a company barbecue once. He was the good guy from her team. The one she'd brushed off with a laugh. He's just a coworker. He's married. Relax. And standing there in my kitchen with cold coffee in my hand and no sleep in my body, that one word echoed in my head. Relax. Last night it sounded harmless. This morning it felt like someone had poured gasoline all over my marriage and handed her the match. Staring at that Uber screen, I felt 2 choices staring back at me. Blow up her phone like a teenager or act like a man who finally sees the truth. So I did the simplest thing first. I took screenshots. The time, the pickup, the drop-off, Ryan's name, the little blue route on the map, every detail. Then I made a new folder in my phone. I didn't call it evidence. I called it truth, because that's what I was done arguing with. Feelings can be spun. Words can be twisted. Screenshots can't. I didn't text her. Didn't ask why. Didn't send a single angry line she could flip back on me later. I put my phone down, grabbed my work bag and went to my first job. Out on the road, fixing other people's broken AC units, I felt something strange. Control. While I was tightening screws and checking thermostats, a thought settled in. This is the line. I'm not chasing her story. She can come home and face mine. By the time lunch rolled around, I hadn't slept, but my mind was steady. If she wanted to walk out on our marriage for a coworker, fine. I was about to show her the door isn't always open when she decides to wander back. Most guys spend their lunch break eating in their truck, scrolling their phones. I spent mine changing the front door to my life. I drove to a little hardware store off the main road, the kind that still smells like metal and sawdust. Picked out a new deadbolt. Nothing fancy, just solid. Paid cash. The old man at the counter made a joke about keeping the bad guys out. I just nodded. He had no idea. By 12:23 p.m. I was standing on my own porch, unscrewing the lock she'd used for 13 years. Max sat right behind me, head tilted like he was guarding the doorway with me. The Texas sun bounced off the new brass as I slid it into place. Inside, I laid her key right in the middle of the kitchen table. That tiny piece of metal suddenly meant everything. Access, trust, home. And she didn't have it anymore. I let out one short breath. Not dramatic. Not shaky. Just heavy. The kind of sigh a man releases when he's finally done being taken for granted. I wasn't planning some movie scene. I was drawing a boundary. Let her knock tonight. This time the door wouldn't just swing open because she decided to come back. The rest of that workday felt like moving through water. I fixed 3 units, signed 2 invoices, nodded through small talk I didn't hear. Every time my phone buzzed, it wasn't her. She'd gone silent again. By late afternoon, I headed home earlier than usual. Not to rest. To wait. I closed the living room curtains most of the way, left just a thin strip open. The house was dim, washed in that soft orange light you get right before the sun drops behind the roofs. Max lay by my feet, picking up on every bit of tension I couldn't hide. I didn't turn on the TV. Didn't put on music. I just sat in silence, listening for the sound of her car, gravel under tires, doors closing, footsteps on the walk. We'd swept 100 times together. When an engine finally slowed in front of the house, my heart didn't race. That was the strange part. There was no panic left, just this flat, solid cold where the fear used to be. I stood up, moved to the entryway and took my place behind the frosted glass of the front door. This time, I wasn't the one waiting to be let in. I heard her before I saw her. Purse straps sliding off her shoulder. The familiar jingle of her keys. The little exhale she always made when she reached the door. Then the sound I'd been waiting for. Metal into metal. Click. Stop. She tried again, a little harder this time. The lock didn't turn. There was this pause, 3, maybe 4 seconds, where you could almost hear her brain trying to make it make sense. Then the handle rattled. Derek. My name, said like a test, like maybe I'd done something cute, some kind of prank. She tried the key again. Nothing. The steel stayed put. Babe, seriously, open up. A laugh on that last part, thin and nervous. I stayed quiet, one hand on the wall, feeling the steady beat of my own pulse. Max lifted his head but didn't bark. Even he seemed to understand. This wasn't his moment to step in. Her knocking picked up, faster, a sharper edge creeping into her voice. Why is the door locked? Did something break? Derek, come on. Yeah, something broke. Just not the door. And on the other side of that wood, she was finally starting to realize it. After the rattling and the knocking came the script. Every cheating spouse seems to have one ready. It's not what you think. That was the opener. Always is. Her voice pressed through the door. Too soft, too shaky in all the right places. My phone died. I fell asleep on a couch. She layered them on, one after another, like throwing blankets over a stain instead of cleaning it. The more she talked, the less it sounded like a wife explaining, and the more it sounded like someone selling a story she'd practiced in her car. I just stood there, inches away, listening to her breath bounce off the wood between us. No tears yet. Just that breathy, wounded tone she used whenever she wanted me to back down. Derek, please. You're blowing this out of proportion. I was exhausted, that's all. Funny thing is, my chest didn't break this time. That had already happened the night before, in the doorway with my phone in my hand. Now all I felt was distance. I kept my hand on the deadbolt and said nothing. Let her words just hang there, unanswered. If it truly wasn't what I thought, she was about to get her chance to prove it. I finally slid the chain back just enough for my voice to reach her. The door stayed mostly closed. That was on purpose. Who is he? I asked. No yelling, no cussing, just that one question, low and clear. She went quiet so fast it was like someone hit mute. He's just a coworker, she rushed out. I told you about him. You're being? Uber drove you, I cut in. The pause after that was different. This wasn't confusion anymore. This was calculation. I could almost hear the gears turning on the other side as she tried to figure out what I knew, how much I'd seen, which lie would still fit through the keyhole. What are you talking about? She finally managed. The ride at 11:42, I said. From your office to Copper Ridge. To Ryan Holtz's place. Silence. Not a sniffle, not a word, nothing. That was the closest thing to honesty I'd gotten from her in 24 hours. Uber doesn't lie, I said quietly. So maybe for once you shouldn't either. I let that sit there between us, heavy as a verdict, and still didn't open the door. After I said, Uber doesn't lie, there was a long, heavy quiet. Then she switched tactics. Derek, just let me in. We'll talk inside, please. That's how it had always gone before. Problem. Step inside. Close the door. Sweep it under the rug where no one could see it. And somehow it became my job to calm her down. Not this time. No, I said. We talk now. Those 3 words surprised even me. I heard the edge in my own voice. Steady. Not cruel. Just done. She wasn't used to that. I could hear it in the way she fumbled. Why are you acting like this? You're making a scene. Can we please just... Who is he? I repeated. Same question, same tone, no wiggle room. There was a tiny sound on the other side of the door, like she'd started a sentence and swallowed it back down. That's what guilt sounds like. Words that can't quite make it out of your mouth. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one chasing her version of the story. I was the one she had to answer to, and I hadn't even opened the door. The next thing out of her mouth told me everything about her priorities. Don't tell his wife. Not, I'm sorry. Not, let me explain. Not, I hurt you. Just fear of getting caught from another angle. I actually let out a quiet, humorless laugh. That's interesting, I said, because your friend's wife might really want to hear this. That landed like a slap. I didn't have to see her face to know her eyes went wide. Why would you? Why would she? What did you do? Now the panic came through sharp and thin. Not because of what she did to me, but because of what might happen to her if the truth spread. Nothing, I said. Yet. Out on the street, I heard a garage door closing. Somebody's day wrapping up like normal. Neighbors going on with their lives while mine sat on the edge of a knife. In that moment, she finally seemed to understand this wasn't just about me being dramatic. This was about her job. Her reputation. Her little secret office romance crashing straight into real life. For the first time since she got to the door, she sounded genuinely scared. And not of losing me, but of losing everything else. You'd think this is the part where I blow up, cussing, shouting through the door, calling her every name in the book. But that never happened. I stayed steady. I didn't yell. I didn't insult her. I just went back to the one thing she couldn't bend, the facts. You left the office at 11:42 p.m., I said. Your Uber dropped you at Copper Ridge at 12:07 a.m. She tried to spin it right away. I told you I was exhausted. We were just talking. I didn't feel safe driving. I didn't follow her down that road. I kept my lane. You didn't text. You didn't call. You didn't come home. Every time she tried to drag the story sideways, how stressed she was, how I never understand how it was just one night, I brought it back to the timestamps, to the silence, to the basic, simple things a wife doesn't do if she actually cares who's sleeping on the other side of that door. Behind me, Max let out a low, uneasy whine, like even he felt the tension in how calm I was. Funny thing is, my calm scared her more than any screaming ever could. While she stumbled over excuses, my phone buzzed in my hand. Different tone, different vibration. I glanced down, expecting another spam email or a job reminder. Instead, I saw a name I didn't recognize but a last name I knew too well. Holtz. For a second, my brain didn't connect it. Then it hit. Ryan's last name. Which meant this wasn't from my wife. This wasn't from him. This was from her. His wife. I opened the message. You should see where they went. Just one line, no greeting, no explanation, and an attachment sitting right under it. My thumb hovered above the screen. On the other side of the door, my wife was still talking, still trying to patch holes in a story that never held water to begin with. Derek, are you even listening to me? She snapped. I didn't answer because in that moment, it wasn't her I needed to listen to anymore. It was the woman who had nothing to gain by telling me the truth. And with one tap on that attachment, my night went from bad to undeniable. I tapped the attachment. First picture, grainy, low light but clear enough where it mattered. Hotel parking lot. You can see the kind of place right away. Not a roadside dump. Not a fancy resort. Just one of those mid-range chains off the highway. Neon sign buzzing over a half-full lot. Front and center, her coat. I knew it instantly. I'd bought it for her last winter. Navy, slightly too big in the shoulders. She's standing there in it, head turned toward a man I didn't need a second look to recognize. Right. He's got his hand around her arm, leaning in. Not coworker distance. Not just talking. The kind of space you only close with someone you're not supposed to be that close to. Down at the bottom of the screen, 12:37 a.m. While I was pacing our living room staring at the door, she was standing under that neon glow with him. Behind the door, I could still hear her voice talking about being tired, about falling asleep on a couch. But my body had gone quiet. No yelling. No shaking. Just that cold, locked-in feeling when your eyes finally catch up to what your gut knew all along. And there was still more to swipe. I slid my thumb to the next picture. The lobby this time. Bright lights. Front desk. The hotel logo glowing on the wall. They're standing side by side now, not sneaking, not hiding. She's looking down at something on the counter, probably his card. While he leans in close enough that their shoulders touch. That alone would have been enough. But there was a third photo. Elevator doors half closed. Her standing inside, his arm wrapped firm around her waist like he owned the right. She's not pulling away. She's not looking uncomfortable. She's leaning in. Tell me again about that couch. My thumb hovered over the screen, waiting for the damage to be done. Then another message popped in from his wife, right under the photos. Room 314. Charged to his card. Checkout 7:08 a.m. There it was. Not implied. Not guessed. Documented. She hadn't been stranded. She hadn't fallen asleep anywhere by accident. She checked in all the way and stayed until morning. On the other side of the door, she finally went quiet. Maybe she felt the shift in the air because at that point, there wasn't a single version of her story left that could survive the truth sitting in my hand. I stared at that last message from his wife. Room 314. Checkout 7:08 a.m. For a second all I heard was my own breathing. Then I lifted my eyes back to the door. She must have felt it, that shift, because her voice came out small. Derek, what are you looking at? I didn't answer her question. I answered with numbers. 7:08 a.m., I said it slow, each piece its own hit. Checkout time. There was a sharp inhale on the other side of the door. The kind that sounds like someone choking on air. You weren't at his house all night, I went on. You checked out of a hotel at 7:08 in the morning. She scrambled. Derek, it didn't mean anything. There it was. That sentence. Not, I didn't. Not, you're wrong. Just, it didn't mean anything. 13 years. Every bill I paid. Every promise I kept. Packaged and thrown in the trash with 5 casual words. I stared at the thin line of light under the door and realized something. If it didn't mean anything to her, then she just told me exactly what our marriage meant too. That was the moment I decided I needed to look her in the eye when I said what came next. I slid the chain back and opened the door just enough for us to see each other. Not wide. Just a hand's width. Enough for the truth to fit through, not her. Her eyes were glossy, red at the edges, mascara smudged. She looked smaller somehow, clutching her purse strap like it was a lifeline. Derek, please, she whispered. We can fix this. I just made a mistake. I held her gaze. For once, I didn't drop my eyes to the floor. Didn't soften just because she was crying. A mistake. I repeated. One drink is a mistake. One bad decision is a mistake. I let the next line land slow. You planned a night with him. You lied. You disappeared. You slept with him. And you walked back here like none of it mattered. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. It didn't mean anything, I said. If that's true. I took a breath, steady as I'd been all day. Then it should be easy for you to leave. Her hand shook on the door frame. Mine didn't. For the first time in this whole mess, I wasn't the one afraid of being alone. After I told her, then it should be easy for you to leave, I reached to the side table by the door and picked up what I'd set there hours earlier. The envelope. I'd written her name on it at lunch in the front seat of my truck, hand steady, pen digging a little too hard into the paper. I held it in the gap between us. Here. She frowned, confused, then took it with both hands like it might bite. Inside were the first documents my lawyer had sent over. Nothing final yet, but enough to show this wasn't a scare tactic. On top of the papers, I tucked a small card, a locksmith near her sister's place. No packed bags. No clothes thrown onto the lawn. I wasn't out to humiliate her. I wasn't out to make a scene. I was just done. "This is real," she whispered, eyes scanning the first page. Her knees actually seemed to soften for a second, like the ground had shifted under her feet. That was the moment our marriage stopped being an argument and started being a process. It wasn't a fight anymore. It was an ending. She clutched the envelope to her chest like a shield. "You're ending our marriage over one night," she shot back, voice cracking. "Over one mistake?" There it was again. That word, mistake. I shook my head slowly. "No," I said. "I'm ending it over every lie it took to get there." She froze. You could see it hit. Like she'd been bracing for a punch to the face and took one to the ribs instead. "All the, I'm working late, all the don't be dramatic, all the times you told me to relax while you walked deeper into this, whatever you want to call it." Her breathing changed. Short. Uneven. Not just from being caught, but from realizing I'd been paying a lot more attention than she thought. "This," I nodded at the envelope, "isn't about a hotel. It's about the person you had to become to walk into it." I pressed the flap of the envelope closed with my thumb, firm. "You chose him," I said quietly. "I'm just choosing me." For the first time since she'd arrived at that locked door, she didn't have a single word left to throw back. While she stood there clutching that envelope, the world did what it always does, kept moving. The city trash truck rolled down our street, brakes squealing, cans clanking. I heard Old Man Jenkins' bin slam back to the curb. A car door shut 2 houses down. Somebody's kid laughed. It was just another Tuesday for everyone else. She glanced over her shoulder, eyes darting left and right like she just remembered other people existed. She took a half step back from the door, angling her body so the envelope wasn't as visible. Can we not do this out here?" she whispered. "What if someone sees?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lower it because of them either. I kept it even because that's who I wanted to be when this was all over. Someone who didn't have to perform his pain. "I'm not putting on a show," I said. "I'm telling you the truth, that's all." There was a time I would have softened just to keep the peace, to make sure the neighbors never saw a crack in the picture. But right then I cared more about my own dignity than their opinions. I wasn't acting for the neighborhood. I was finally living honest for myself. After a long silence, she spoke again. Different tone this time. Less tears, more calculation. "Derek, please don't tell her," she said. "Ryan's wife. She's not stable. She'll blow everything up." There it was. Not our marriage. Not what she'd done to me. Everything. I heard the manipulation in it. Clean as a siren. "She'll ruin his career. Mine too. She'll go crazy. She'll destroy everything." "Everything?" I asked quietly. "Does everything include our marriage, or is that just collateral to you?" She looked away, then out toward the street, jaw tight, couldn't meet my eyes. That told me more than any answer. "You don't understand," she muttered. "No," I said, "I understand perfectly. You're more afraid of your image and his job than the fact you walked out on your husband and lied about it. That's the thing about people. When they're cornered, what they're really scared of finally shows." She wasn't terrified of losing me. She was terrified of losing her little double life, her reputation, her comfort. And once I saw that clearly, it got a lot easier to let her go. By then, it had been over 24 hours since I'd closed my eyes. But the truth is, I don't think I'd really slept right in years. Not the way a man sleeps when he feels safe in his own home. I leaned my shoulder against the door frame, feeling the weight of it all settle in. Not as panic. Not as noise. Just as this solid, heavy knowing. "I stayed up all night wondering if you were in a ditch," I said quietly. "In a hospital. Dead." She opened her mouth, but I kept going. "I took my vows seriously," I told her. "Maybe that makes me old-fashioned. Maybe that makes me boring. But my vows meant something to me." Her eyes dropped to the porch boards. "Mine didn't. All those nights you said you were working late, I believed you. All those times you told me not to be dramatic, I backed off. That's on me." I straightened up a little. "But this." I nodded at the envelope in her hands. "This is me finally standing my ground." She didn't argue. Didn't defend. She just bowed her head. And for the first time, I felt more proud of myself than ashamed of being the one who stayed. After that, something in the air changed. She took a small step back from the door, like she needed more room to breathe. Or maybe she just couldn't stand that close to the truth anymore. Tears started to spill over, finally, the kind that used to make me rush for a tissue, wrap my arms around her, say, "We'll figure it out." This time I didn't move. I didn't hand her a towel. I handed her a way out. Clean. Quiet. On her feet instead of in pieces. You have choices, I said. You can call your sister. Call a friend. Call whoever you were really with last night. But you're not walking back into this house like nothing happened. She swallowed hard, throat working around words she either couldn't form or didn't dare to. Silence settled between us. Not the scared silence from the night before, but the kind that comes right before a verdict. Max shifted behind me, nails clicking once on the hardwood. Even he seemed to be waiting. I didn't push her. Didn't rush her. I just held the line and let her decide which side of it she was going to stand on. While she stood there, frozen with that envelope in her hands, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't her. Different tone, different number. I glanced down. On the screen, a name I'd only seen once that morning. His wife. I opened the message. Thank you for confirming. I'm filing today. That was it. No emoji. No drama. Just a simple sentence from a woman who'd clearly already cried her eyes out before she ever typed it. I stared at the words longer than I needed to. Not because I was shocked. Honestly, I wasn't anymore, but because it hit me. This fallout wasn't just mine. 2 marriages. 2 homes. 2 lives blown open because 2 people wanted something on the side. Court dates, paperwork, signatures, splitting what used to be ours down the middle. It all started right there in a text that fit in one line on my screen. I didn't shake. I didn't fall apart. I just felt this deep, quiet shift. We weren't arguing about what happened anymore. We were living in the consequences. Standing in that doorway with her in front of me and his wife on my phone, one sentence came back to me like a bad echo. He's married. Relax. She'd said it months ago, laughing it off in our kitchen while she stirred sauce on the stove. I remember the way she rolled her eyes like I was some insecure teenager for even raising an eyebrow. Not a big deal, she'd added. Just coworkers, just drinks, just late nights. Funny how, not a big deal, turned into 2 sets of divorce papers and a hotel bill at 7:08 in the morning. I let my eyes drift shut for a couple seconds. Not to escape it, but to finally see the pattern for what it was. Every time I'd felt something was off, she'd thrown that same blanket over it. Don't be dramatic. Relax. You're overthinking. Turns out I wasn't. I was underreacting. That one little sentence, he's married. Relax, wasn't comfort. It was a smokescreen. And now that the smoke had cleared, all that was left was what it really cost. My trust. Her name. And the version of our life I used to believe in. Standing there watching her clutch that envelope like it was some kind of unfair punishment, something in me finally clicked all the way into place. I'm not a doormat. I'm a man who fixes things for a living. Fridges, ACs, busted heaters. Most of them just need a new part, a reset, a little patience. But every tech knows there's a moment where you stop trying to repair and you tell the customer the truth. This thing's done. You're better off replacing it. That's where I was. My marriage hadn't died in one night at a hotel. It died slowly under every little lie she covered with relax, and you're overreacting. Some stuff is unfixable. Not because you don't want to fix it, but because the damage isn't mechanical, it's intentional. There's no warranty on a heart. You can't send it back and say, this one came cracked. I walked over to the counter, picked up the copy of the paperwork my lawyer had emailed me, and signed the first page with a firm, steady hand. I wasn't signing away my life. I was signing away my role as her landing pad. After she left with that envelope, the house got real quiet. I fed Max, rinsed out my coffee mug. Then sat at the kitchen table with my phone and a business card my buddy Mike had given me months back. Good guy, fair, no nonsense, he'd said. Back then I'd laughed it off. Now I typed the number in. Law Office of Carter and Wells. A woman answered. My voice came out calm. Almost too calm. Yeah. My name's Derek Lawson. My wife checked into a hotel last night with a coworker. I got proof. I think it's time I talked to somebody. They put me through. The lawyer didn't waste time. Asked short, direct questions. I gave short, direct answers. He told me to forward everything. Uber screenshots, hotel photos, the text from Ryan's wife. I did. Right there at the table, thumb tapping send, on each ugly little piece of truth. A few minutes later he emailed a checklist. Assets. Accounts. Dates. What to gather, what not to say. Felt strange. Not like revenge. Like planning a job. Like lining up tools before you start a big repair. Except this time the thing I was dismantling was my own marriage. On purpose. The lawyer's email sat open on my phone like a to-do list for ending a life I'd spent 13 years building. So, I got up and started working through it. First thing, assets. I walked the house with my phone in my hand, not as a husband this time, but as a man taking inventory. I snapped pictures of the truck in the driveway. The title in the junk drawer. The old SUV we still owed on. Took photos of the AC unit I'd installed myself, the washer and dryer, the TV, the tools in the garage. Serial numbers, mileage, model tags. Then the house papers. Mortgage documents, insurance, the closing statement we'd once celebrated over takeout. I laid them out on the table and took clear shots of every page my lawyer said he'd need. I made a separate list just for her. Jewelry I'd bought. The laptop from her job. The furniture she'd picked. The things that were more hers than ours. For the first time, the lines stopped being emotional and started being financial, practical, sharp. What used to be everything we share became 2 columns in my notes app. Not to punish her. Just to make it clear where she ended and I began. Once the photos were done and the lists were saved, the house felt strangely empty. Same walls. Same furniture. But it didn't feel like ours anymore. It felt like a place in transition. I sat back down at the kitchen table, pulled a blank sticky note toward me and stared at it for a second. Then I wrote, "Derek, don't second guess this. Her choices don't define your worth. You're worth her lies." It felt stupid for half a second. Some self-help nonsense I would have made fun of at another time. But I knew myself. I knew there'd be a night down the road where I'd start wondering if I'd overreacted, if I'd blown up my life for nothing. That note wasn't for today. It was for that night. I slid it into the folder with the printed emails and screenshots. As I did, Max hopped up, put his front paws on my thigh and looked at me with those big steady eyes dogs have, the kind that say, "I'm still here. You're still my person." I scratched behind his ears and let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. If no one else stood in my corner in the weeks ahead, I wanted at least one voice on paper reminding me I wasn't crazy for choosing myself. The phone rang that night after things had gone quiet. Her name on the screen, same contact photo, totally different reality. I let it buzz twice before I picked up. "Yeah." Her voice was raw, like she'd been crying for hours. "Derek, we can fix this," she said. "Please, we can go to counseling. I'll block his number. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't throw us away." For a second, the history tried to speak. Christmases. Road trips. Inside jokes. All the little things that don't just disappear. But then the hotel hallway flashed in my mind. Room 314. 7:08 a.m. "I fix things for a living," I said. "I know the difference between a repair and a replace." She went silent. Then the sobbing started, messy and loud in my ear. I didn't hang up. I let her talk. Let her pour it all out. How scared she was. How it got out of hand. How she never meant to hurt me. I listened. I didn't argue. I didn't offer hope I knew I didn't have. When she finally ran out of words, I said the only two that felt honest. "Take care." Then I ended the call and with it, any version of us I could still halfway believe in. The next day, the world looked almost offensively normal. Sunlight leaned across the wooden porch, catching the dust on the railings I kept meaning to sand. Somewhere down the block, a lawnmower buzzed to life. Steady, low, familiar. That mix of gasoline and fresh-cut grass drifted through the open kitchen window. I stood at the sink, filling Max's water bowl, watching the stream run clear, then slow, then stop. He lapped it up like always, tail thumping, completely untouched by lawyers, hotels, or broken vows. A delivery truck rumbled past. Kids on bikes yelled to each other. Mrs. Green from across the street bent to pick up her mail. Life in Cedar Park marched on like my marriage hadn't just been marked for demolition. And that's when it really sank in. The world doesn't collapse when your heart does. The sky doesn't darken. The earth doesn't crack. It's just you that changes. I set the bowl down, rubbed Max's head, and stood there for a moment, barefoot on the cool tile, feeling that strange split. Outside, everything was exactly the same. Inside, nothing was. The next morning, I woke up to a list on the fridge I'd written weeks ago. Not about divorce, about the house. Change AC filter. Tighten that loose door hinge. Fix the slow drip in the kitchen faucet. So I did. I pulled the vent cover down, swapped the dusty filter for a new one, felt the cool air kick on a little cleaner. Took a screwdriver to that front door hinge that had been clicking for months. Crawled under the sink, tightened the connections until the drip finally stopped. None of it was dramatic. No big music. No applause. Just small, necessary things that kept this house standing. And somewhere between wiping my hands on a rag and putting the toolbox back on its shelf, it hit me. This place still needs someone who shows up. The dog still needs feeding. The bills still need paying. The work still needs doing. Being her husband was part of my life. It wasn't all of who I am. I'm a man who fixes things. Maybe now that doesn't mean fixing us anymore. Maybe it means learning how to fix what's left of me. And that, I realized, is still a job worth doing. Later that day, I stared at my phone longer than I care to admit. Lawyer. Boss. A couple buddies. Then my eyes landed on a name that's been in my contacts since the day I bought the thing. Mom. I hit call before I could talk myself out of it. She picked up on the second ring. Hey honey. Everything okay? I didn't unload everything. I just gave her the short version. No hotel room numbers, no timestamps, just she cheated. I've seen enough. I'm ending it. On the other end, silence. Then a long, tired sigh, the kind only a mother can make. I'm proud of you, she said. You stood your ground. I didn't answer right away. I let those words sink in. Settle somewhere under my ribs where the hurt had been chewing all day. You hear me? She added. You're not weak for leaving. You'd be weak for staying where you're not respected. Yeah, I finally said. I hear you, Mom. She started to worry out loud. Money. The house. If I was eating. The usual. I cut in gently. I'll be okay. Don't lose sleep over me. When we hung up, the house was still quiet, but for the first time, I didn't feel completely alone in it. That night felt different before it even started. I flipped the porch light off earlier than usual. No more leaving it on like a lighthouse for someone who chose another shore. The new deadbolt caught with a clean, solid click when I locked it. Brass still bright. Edges still sharp. It looked like it belonged to a different chapter. In the bedroom, Max did his usual circles at the foot of the bed, then curled up tight against my feet like he was clocking in for guard duty. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling in the dark, waiting for the familiar knot in my chest to crank up. It didn't. It didn't vanish either. It was just quieter. My mind still wandered. Hotel doors. 7:08 a.m. Signatures on paper. But it didn't spin out the way it had the night before. No checking the driveway. No jumping at every car passing by. At some point, without realizing when, I slipped under. Not a full night, not yet. But 3 solid hours where the dreams didn't shake me awake. And for the first time in a long time, the house actually felt like it was on my side. The next morning, my phone buzzed with something that wasn't a lie, a plea, or an apology. It was an email from my lawyer. Subject line, Next Steps, Lawson. He'd laid it all out like a wiring diagram. Dates. Forms. What gets filed when. Who signs what. How long each stage usually takes. Mediation. Division. Final hearing. Clean, simple bullets for a very messy thing. I sat at the kitchen table with a pen in my hand, going down the list one line at a time, ticking off what was already done. Proof gathered, assets documented, separate account opened, attachments ready to send. Then I added the screenshots, the hotel photos, the text from Ryan's wife, into the shared drive link he'd sent. No drama, no extra commentary, just facts. For months, maybe years, I'd felt like my life was something happening to me. That morning, it started to feel like something I was actually steering again. Not every outcome was in my control, but the process that finally was. At some point, you realize leaving the door half open is worse than just shutting it. She'd still text here and there, little things. I can't believe you're doing this. We were good before this. I miss us. Every message felt like someone poking at a bruise just to see if it still hurt. I sat on the edge of the bed one afternoon, phone in my hand, reading the same thread for the 10th time. I could have unloaded everything I was thinking. I could have tried to win the argument I'd already won with myself. Instead, I typed 4 simple words. I wish you well. No sarcasm. No hooks left hanging. Just the truth. I don't hate you. I just don't want this anymore. I hit send. Watched it deliver. Then I opened the settings, scrolled down, and tapped block this caller. No big ceremony. Just one decision. No more middle of the night texts. No more emotional landmines on a Tuesday morning. The second her name disappeared from my active contacts, the quiet that followed didn't feel empty this time. It felt like space. What? A few days later, I clipped Max's leash on and stepped outside just before sunset. Same old sidewalk running past the same trimmed lawns. Texas sky doing that soft orange and purple thing it does when the heat finally lets go. The air had that dry warmth to it, comfortable, not choking. We walked our usual loop. Max trotted ahead, nose in every yard, tail doing that lazy wag. I let him lead. For once, I wasn't in a hurry to get anywhere. A truck rolled by slow. One of the neighbors, Tom, from around the corner, leaned out the window just enough to call, "Hang in there, man." I nodded, gave him a half smile. "I'm good," I said. And I didn't hear it as a lie this time. We passed the little park at the end of the street. Kids were still on the swings. Someone was grilling. Music floated low from a backyard. Life happening. Not mine and hers. Just life. Max tugged the leash toward a patch of grass. I laughed under my breath and let him drag me a couple extra steps. We walked straight through the fading light. Me and this dog in this new version of my life. Not fixed. Not perfect. But finally, honestly, mine. So let me leave you with this. I didn't end my marriage over one night. I ended it over every lie it took to get there. Every relax. Every you're overreacting. Every late text that wasn't where she said she was. That hotel room was just the receipt. I'm not perfect. I've made my share of mistakes. But I showed up. I kept the lights on. I kept my vows. And at some point, a man has to decide if he's a husband or a doormat. I chose self-respect. If you've ever taken that gut punch, the kind where your chest goes hollow and the life you thought you had falls straight through it, hear me on this. You're not crazy. You're not weak. You're not alone. You are allowed to draw a line and say, this is where it stops. And as for Ryan, let's just say the hotel wasn't the worst thing I found out about him. There's more to that story. More than his wife even knew when she texted me. If any of this hit home, if you've ever felt like your trust was being used against you, drop a comment. I hear you. Hit subscribe and stay with me. Because this started with one message on my phone, but what came after? Men like us need to hear it.